Hi, welcome to part 2 of how I make a fine art print. And yesterday we took a look at this one to begin with. Now we didn't photograph this particular seed pod. We photographed a singular one, okay? And I went ahead and imported all of them into the computer. And what I did was I brought them into Photoshop and I kind of played around with it and I looked at it and I decided I really didn't like it. So I went back to the drawing board and reshot it, okay? And I guess I didn't like the background the way I had it. I wanted it more vibrant. And so I used a red background, okay? And see, these are some of the shots that I captured. So once I have them on my computer, I choose which ones I want. I'll open each one up and look at them a little bit larger, choose which ones I want, and then I'll go to my, this is Bridge, Adobe Bridge 2020, and what I'll do is I'll go to my Tools menu up here and choose Photoshop, and then I'll say load whatever I've selected into the files into Photoshop layers. So now I've done that, and I've pre-done that. I didn't want to take up your time having you wait for those to load, so I've pre-done it. Usually now I've just pre-done it with the JPEGs, but I truthfully never take just the JPEGs, I take the raw files. However, my camera makes a 50 megabyte file. So just for speed and the example, I just wanted to show you what it looks like when you open them as layers in Photoshop. Okay, so this is Adobe Photoshop 2020 that I'm using. Now, I love the red in this, and I think that it brings out, it just brings out the yellows and oranges in this seed pod. Okay, so now that you understand this, I'm going to close this down and tell you what I'm going to do next. Well, first of all, I'll separate these into two different groups because when I have the large files, I can't, my computer isn't fast enough, so I have to do this in stages. So what I'll do is I'll pick all of the images that have the seed pod itself in focus, some portion of it in focus. I'll put that all into one group. And then I'll go through and I'll identify all of the other ones where the stem is in focus. And I'll put all those in another group. Okay, so that's what I'm going to show you next, is the groups I put them in, but also what I'll do with them once they're in groups. So I'm going to close this. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay, so here I have them in groups. You can kind of see there's group 1, group 2. Let me, whoops. Turn that on, turn that off. So I have two groups. Group 1 and group 2. So right now you can't really tell if I shut one of the groups off because all of these are above it, above that layer, okay? So you'll see these black boxes that are right beside them, the images on each layer, okay? That is a mask, and that's a layer mask, and it's just showing you that most of the layer is not visible. Only the part that is white is visible, okay? So how I've accomplished that is I've taken all of these, so I'll select all of these layers, kind of like that, and then I go to Image, and Auto Blend Layers. Okay, and then Photoshop is going to do a whole bunch of work for me. And it's going to go through and identify the parts that are in focus and only leave those visible. So it will mask everything else out and leave the parts that are in focus visible. Okay? So I've done that to both layers. And the reason I did that in separate groups like that is because if I would select all of those layers, it might freeze up my computer. And it's just a faster way of working. So I've learned to just separate them out like that. Okay, so you'll see that there's this edge around the edge of the image. And that's caused by, if you look at this again, just before I did the auto blend layers, I selected everything and auto aligned them. Because even though I had it on a tripod, the way the lens was, my Cam Ranger was controlling my lens, it just shifts it just a little bit, and I had kind of a slow shutter, so it moves slightly. So I wanted to make sure it was all aligned correctly. And when you zoom in and zoom out just slightly, it's going to get off just a little bit. So you want to make sure and align all those. Then I went through and I blended those two separate groups. Hi, you've just seen how I import my images from Bridge into Photoshop. And then what I do with them, I'll auto-align them and then put them into two different groups if I have a lot of images. And in this case, I put the groups with the seed pod in one group that were in focus, and then the second group was the stem that was in focus. And then I used a file command from the menu that auto-blended the layers and which allowed Photoshop to mask out all of the layers, all of the parts of the images that were not in focus and leave the parts that were in focus. So tomorrow, join me for a continuation of this process. Thanks. Bye.